Hi, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. I'm going to share my screen and do what I sort of call is the fastest explanation of this book, known to man. And I will maybe let people in, and Michael will let people in. I'm so excited about this. This is just in pre-publication sales with my colleagues Laura Lipton and Bruce Wellman, who have done this book and sort of boutique published it. So I'm really excited about it. And so give me a few minutes to give you the sense of it, and then what hopefully we're going to be doing together this summer. I know that the concept of professionalism, that when people come into your schools, there's something in their job description in terms of teaching standards or leadership standards that just simply says everybody needs to be, effective team player, know how to collaborate with a variety of stakeholders, and absolutely, bottom line, that needs to happen. This book goes beyond that, okay? In California, where my feet are on the ground right now and have been for 13 months, we have the California standards for the teaching profession. And so there is a baseline for sort of being a professional beyond putting pants on when you're on a Zoom call, and then being in a team meeting. All of that's there. But I think we say, great, that's fine. You're a professional. You're okay. You come to meetings, you participate in your team, and that's good. I think we need to have more. I think we need to grow up past that and develop ourselves in bigger ways. And when I think about how this relates and what Michael just said about personal efficacy and collective efficacy, you can look at the work of Jenny Donahue out of Canada, who speaks to the fact that you need collective efficacy and a focus on joint work, and doing it for the purpose of improving student instruction. And who shows up in the collective? People, individuals. So it's really this link between Hattie's research around the importance of collective efficacy, Jenny Donahue's research, and Albert Bandura's research, he's from Stanford, around personal efficacy. How does each individual add to the collective so the focus can be on that joint work? There's research from Breik and Schneider in the early 2000s. They were at that time, the University of Chicago, where they actually made the link and threaded the needle that if adults had relational trust with each other, there was a much greater sense that they could increase student achievement. We know that, but the question is, did somebody do research on it? Yes, they did. And Hargraves and O'Connor, Andy Hargraves and Michael O'Connor, talk about how the professionalism that we expect right now is that we're collaborative. That is the interesting piece to me. I had, when I went into my teaching, a credential in how to teach students. I didn't have a credential in how to talk effectively to other adults. And so I studied cognitive coaching and I studied facilitation with adaptive schools. And when the team members would come together, how are we effective group members? And what does it take from each individual to actually be the adult that's grown up at work? And so what I mean by growing up at work is not to be diminishing. I'm not saying grow up. I'm saying let's grow up. Let's develop ourselves. We need to have an orientation, a different orientation to our development as our world, I put the two in there, as our world and our work becomes more complex. So in the US right now, the Derek Chauvin trial was happening. We're in the middle of a racial reckoning. There's conversation about that across the world. The pandemic has happened. Our work is more complex. How do we show up for each other, adult to adult? And how do we grow up to do that more effectively? Because we can grow psychologically and cognitively and emotionally. And I think we should be expected to do so. It's possible to develop. We talk about Carol Dweck's growth mindset all the time with kids. Do we grow ourselves? And does our school support that and expect it and provide opportunities to do it? I think schools must support both child development and adult development. And it's not an indulgence. We can't presume that, and I know I was just on the phone with some principals in LA yesterday, Los Angeles. Oh, I just want them to already be grown up. We don't have time to develop the adults. They should be fully cooked. They should be mature. They should know what they're doing. I don't have time to spoon feed anything. I'm not saying we don't have foundational expectations. I'm saying we can live up beyond those foundational expectations. And it isn't an indulgence that we do that, because we've got to develop ourselves as better educators and better human beings. Our field needs to focus on it a little more. And that's where this work comes in. So in this summer, we're going to do a little workshop, and there's a book to support it. So it's beyond professionalism is really where we're at. What does that look like? Well, it's undergirded by the work of Robert Keegan. I have a cognitive crush on Bob. He's written a number of books. In the 80s, he wrote a book that I just love the title, okay? The title is In Over Our Heads: The Mental Demands of Modern Life. And it's really where I first started to discover this concept of adults developing, growing up. In corporate, they talk about it a bunch because they want people in the C-suite to have complexity maturity, and they spend oodles of money and time doing executive coaching so that people can be broader in their perspectives, to be more open to seeing the gray of things. I think we need to bring that into education, because we need to work with each other in more complex ways. So the book and the work, okay, the workshop, have these hopes, these goals, these outcomes, that through looking at 5 facets, we're going to be able to see challenges as outside us, not to be subject to them or swept by things. In adult developmental theory, there's a lot about subject and object. And the more that we can see from the balcony, if you've done adaptive schools work or cognitive coaching, the more we can see from the balcony, the more that we can not just always be on the dance floor and have ourselves just right in there with our focus, we can be less reactive. We can be more collaborative. We can be more thoughtful. And I think the more that we can develop ourselves and grow up, we're going to live a little bit more easily. And that, I think, is a personal development piece. So there are 5 parts to this, okay? And I think I literally go right into questions and answers after this. I'm gonna like the speed of this whole thing. The first one is, we need to better know our identity or our identities. Who are we? I was just having this conversation with some people in South America, and I often come as a US citizen to do work in Asia, in South America, and I am so aware of my identity as a Californian, my identity as a female, my identity as a US citizen, my identity as in faith and spirit as a Jewish person. And I come and I'm so aware that maybe other people have different identities. And I come into international systems and they're like, oh yeah, we just don't talk about it as much. And I'm like, well, doesn't that rub up against different people's ideas of what teaching should be, how schools should go, where we're coming with our beliefs and our ideas? And they're like, yeah, but we're international. And I'm like, yeah, but that needs to be looked at closely, because we sometimes not just bump up against, but we chafe and we irritate each other because we're not as awake to those identities. We also need to suspend our certainty. Our way is not always the right way. How are we open to other people's points of view? Somebody was asking me about Lencioni, Patrick Lencioni's engaging in conflict kind of pieces today. And what would it look like to suspend certainty? It could be literally like, huh, I've never thought of that. What am I missing? How do you see this? Literally like language. And there are so many other ways, macro, micro points of view, but are we advocating and not always inquiring? And how do we balance that? Take responsibility. Yes, for your work product, but as I always talk about, because I'm an adult to adult communication nerd, how do we take responsibility for our language? How do we ask for clarification? How do we seek out help if we're unclear? How do we express a concern, not a complaint? How do we have a hard conversation that's humane? And do we take responsibility for our language and our development? Engage in reciprocity. Kind of interesting language, but it's the idea that every adult who comes into a school to talk to other adults is a part of your job. Not just the add-on in the PLC meeting or the staff meeting on Thursdays. We need to engage with mutual respect and believe that other adults are a value add to us, and we are asked and expected to be a value add to others. That equal reciprocity, and that we engage that way. And I just know that, as I just mentioned, I had a credential on how to teach. I didn't have a credential on how to talk effectively to other adults. So is that part of how you're building yourself? And then how do you build your resiliency? Not just learned optimism by Martin Seligman, or drinking more water, or taking more self-care days, but how do we, which are all fabulous. I have more extreme self-care support in my life. I love resiliency, but I also am learning that I have to work on my emotional and psychological hygiene so that I don't ooze my drama into a team. And how can I be healthier for myself and for them? How can I be able to manage my disappointment, my grief, in ways that do not, I can be vulnerable about it, but I can also be able to sort of manage myself and not be swept and come into a team meeting and just, be completely overwhelmed. Okay. So I look at all of that and I say, and we're going to come back to that. We got to talk about this. And the workshop, the book definitely does this, but the workshop that I'm hoping we're going to do is July. How fun is that? 2 weeks in July for a couple hours, 4 times, where you will be able to get a digital copy of the book, and we'll talk about the foundations of the work, the adult developmental theory, but then unpack those facets. In the work, there are self-assessments, there are exercises, there are videos, there's text reading, there's lots of things. But I think as a team, we can start off doing personal learning plans, and I call them stretch plans, or you can start to say, you know what, I need to bring this back, and we need to use this as the foundation for our team. So that's really where this stuff is going. And Michael is back. He's just turned himself back on. He's in there. And so that's literally the end of my thing. And we're at the insights, ahas, burning questions part. Boom.
Jennifer, thank you so much for that presentation and those insights. I actually, how candid you are, I think, is one of the greatest things about listening to you. And it's just a great way to start the day. I got a question for you, and I'm going to invite everybody else to ask questions too. So if you have a question, we're a pretty small audience. Feel free just to raise a hand by using reactions on Zoom, put it into chat, and more than happy to let you interact while the audience is kind of getting their questions together. The question I have for you is, what would be one key exercise that participants today can take back to their teams around these 5 facets? What is the one, one thing they can do today just to help sort of consolidate what they've heard you talk about?
So I'm just thinking of easy ones or easier ones. One was in resilience, it was a thanks for nothing exercise. I had a terrible moment with a colleague, and I was kind of whining about it with my friend Shirley, and she said, "Oh, you better send them a thank you note." I said, "Send her a thank you note. What, are you kidding?" And I realized that I could learn from it, and I could write myself the thank you note that I would send to this person. And I call it the thanks for nothing piece, but it isn't nothing. And so it could be, dear blank, my experience, talking to you or in this moment with you really taught me this. It did kind of hurt my feelings, but this is what I'm taking away. This is what I'm learning. And I just want to thank you for it. And so there could be thanks for nothing kind of things where it isn't snotty. It's really thanks for what? For something, right? There's an identity circle exercise. There's a once upon a time suspend certainty exercise that I got from the D school. Ooh, Carrie says, what can you give me an example of emotional and psychological hygiene? So I think about, and I thank you for that question. I have been in meetings where somebody comes in and they haven't managed something that just happened before they walked in the meeting. And they're just like, sorry, I'm just like totally distracted because and now the whole meeting has been sidetracked because they haven't sort of taken care of themselves or said, I can't be in here right now. Give me 5 more minutes. I'm going to go kind of center myself. I've also seen emotional and psychological hygiene, a reply all email where somebody sends that and they haven't kind of cleaned up. They've not gotten focused on really who they should have been writing to and how they should be responding. So you'll see that all of a sudden, well, isn't that take responsibility? And maybe that is build resiliency. They're all interlinked. They're all fused. But I've watched people bring some drama into places that it wasn't necessary. And so you have to kind of figure out which self do I need to bring here right now, and am I really honoring the norms that we have for this, or am I going passive aggressive, Or am I speaking about things that are confidential when I shouldn't? Those things are, I think, examples of emotional psychological hygiene. So I just finished a class, and with a woman named Dr. Valerie Livesay, and she talked about this pandemic as a big moment to fall back. We just sort of fell back into not as big of a version of who we are. That we went to and they don't have any, and it's the idea that you fall back into that because you just can't get bigger. You have no, it's like you're subject to it. You're just like, I'm too exhausted. I can't even get up to the balcony. I can't see it. And she asked us to look at our fallback characters, our not so big selves. We know that we could be bigger, but she had us sort of dialogue with our smaller selves, like what's going on now, and provide for them a little care. And then said, we need to bring, she didn't say this, she didn't say to us like mommy sort of, but she said, what is a bigger self that you want to actually be? And so I played, just to give you an example, I said, my smaller self is the bruised, indignant, whiny one. Now that is not a big self, but she's in there and she gets really, and she gets whiny and she's not nice and she's snippy. And there are moments when I just don't know what to do with that. And she said to me, well, who would be bigger? What's the better self? And I'm like, the rooted woman. She's like, well, tell me what the rooted woman does. And I said, well, the rooted woman would do this and this. And she said, let's talk about that. I think what was helpful about it was to name that. And what it did was it third pointed it. It named this self that isn't my best self. And then I could kind of it was an object. I wasn't subject to her. I could talk to her and then figure out who else I wanted to be. And so I have a feeling that this is an assumption. I have a feeling that people have just sort of fallen back, and it isn't due to anything that they're stressed, they're exhausted, they're tired, they're going back to the most controlled way that they can do things, and then they get snippier. And we can talk to that person, and then we can talk about being other people, bigger people, and what would that do? And so I just have a feeling it's just a fallback character.
So it's Acamus. Everything for Hackamus is going to be Hong Kong, China times. And again, I'm excited about this because this is the first time that Acamus, with the move to virtual, we get to do so many exciting things. And we get to have something during the summer. We get to spread it out. So it's, we get to truly reflect on what we're doing. And again, we get to do it with somebody that has been very caring to our community. Again, I can't say enough for the fact that I called upon Jennifer probably 2 times during a course that we did to say, hey, would you mind just having a personal one-on-one chat with this person because they're having a hard time? And the feedback came back was like, I needed that. That was so refreshing. And then when a whole school basically said, do you mind if we reschedule this session? Because we're having a tough time. And that, Jennifer showed up.
Friday night with China. What else could I possibly do?
Hey, it's a good pandemic evening. Yeah, Netflix or, China workshop. So, and she did it. And you know what? It's awesome. For those of you, I hope we get to see you back when Stephen Barkley speaks with us May 19th. Again, another person that's been so fantastic to Acamus. He has been so responsive to his personal instructionalized coaching participants, moving dates around, engaging with them one-on-one, giving them a load of information. The only complaint that one has gotten is the fact that I never realized there was so much content to digest. So that's why we spread out the learning. That's why we have virtual. I'm going to kind of I'm going to leave it there. Everybody knows how to get in touch with Jennifer. I believe, Jennifer, do you have a contact slide there?
Bum, bum. I'm
Boom.
so good, I can't stand myself.
If there's anything you need, please get in touch with her directly. Please go to the Acamus website if you want to register for this course. It is Hong Kong time. And please keep in mind our future micro lessons, which will have Stephen Barkley and then James Anderson talking about Carol Dweck. He's the growth mindset guy. And he's a really exciting speaker to listen to as well. All of you have a great, great Wednesday. And thank you for showing up today.